There is a person you know, maybe a colleague, maybe a neighbor, who never seems rattled by money. Bills hit. Markets shake. Economic headlines scream disaster. And they just keep moving. Same calm. Same clarity. Same quiet confidence. And for the longest time, watching people like that used to genuinely confuse me. Because I was the opposite. I remember sitting in my car in a parking lot, staring at a bank notification on my phone, not because the number was catastrophic, but because I couldn't stop calculating. Rent minus groceries minus the thing I forgot I subscribed to 3 months ago. The math wasn't even that bad, but the anxiety was. And I kept wondering, why does money feel like a threat to me, when some people seem to float above all of it? If you're new here, I'm Henry, and on this channel, Henry Wealth Blueprint, we don't talk about generic money tips. We go deeper. We talk about the psychology behind why some people build lasting financial stability while others stay trapped in cycles that have nothing to do with their income. If that's the kind of thinking you want more of, hit subscribe right now. I put a lot of intention into every single video here. Now, back to that calm person you know. Here's what I discovered, and it took me years of observing, reading, making financial mistakes, and eventually turning them around to understand this. The people who seem unbothered by money stress are not necessarily richer than you. Some of the most anxious people I've ever met had multiple income streams and impressive salaries. And some of the most financially composed people I've encountered lived on ordinary wages. The gap between them had almost nothing to do with the number in the bank account. It had to do with their relationship to uncertainty. Let me explain what I mean. Most of us were taught, unconsciously, through the way our parents talked about bills, through watching the news, through school systems that never once covered personal finance, that financial safety is a destination. That one day, if you hit a certain number, you'll feel okay. You'll stop worrying. You'll breathe. And so we spend our lives running toward that number, and every time we fall short of it, the alarm goes off in our nervous system. Threat. Danger. Something is wrong. But the people who don't seem stressed about money, they were never sold that idea. Or somewhere along the way, they stopped believing it. Morgan Housel, in one of the most important finance books written in the last decade, made an observation that stopped me mid-page. He said the goal isn't wealth, it's the ability to wake up every morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. That's it. That's the entire thing. Not a yacht. Not a number. A feeling of control over your time. The financially composed people I've studied, and the version of myself I've slowly been building, all organize their decisions around that single axis. And the moment you shift from chasing a number to protecting your freedom of choice, your whole financial behavior changes. Here's something I did years ago that I want you to sit with. I looked at every financial decision I'd made in the previous 5 years that caused me stress, and I asked myself, was this decision driven by fear, or was it driven by intention? Almost every anxious financial move I made was fear-driven. I bought things because I was afraid of feeling left out. I avoided investing because I was afraid of losing. I stayed in a bad income situation because I was afraid of the unknown. Fear was the engine behind almost every choice that made my financial life harder. And the people who seem calm around money, what runs their engine is something different. It's not fearlessness. Don't mistake calm for the absence of awareness. It's that their decisions are tethered to a clear internal framework rather than external panic. John D. Rockefeller, and you don't have to admire the man to learn from his psychology, once said something that I've never forgotten. During the financial panic of 1907, when banks were collapsing and the American economy was genuinely on the edge, he reportedly told reporters, "These are the days that make men." Not because he was indifferent to the collapse, but because his framework for money was built on principles, not market conditions. He knew what he was doing and why. And when everything around him shook, the internal structure held. That's the architecture most financially stressed people are missing. Not income. Not luck. Architecture. Here's a truth that took me time to fully accept. Financial stress, for most people, is not a math problem. It's a clarity problem. When you don't know what money is for in your life, what it's meant to protect, what it's meant to build, what it's allowed to buy and what it isn't, every financial event becomes a potential threat. A car repair hits and it feels like an emergency because you don't know where it fits in your larger picture. But for someone who has built a clear structure, who knows what their baseline costs are, what their buffer looks like, what they're building toward, that same car repair is just a line item. Same event. Completely different nervous system response. I started building what I now call a financial floor, a number that represents the minimum my life costs, plus a cushion that lives beneath it. It's not a budget in the traditional sense. It's more like an anchor. When I know the floor is solid, every decision above it carries less weight. I'm not calculating from a place of fear anymore. I'm operating from a stable base. And that shift, from calculating fear to calculating from clarity, changed how money felt more than any salary increase I'd ever gotten. But there's one more layer here, and this is the one most financial content completely ignores. The calmest people around money have internalized something that takes years to build. They've decoupled their identity from their financial state. This is harder than it sounds, because our culture has spent decades tying your worth to your net worth. The house you live in, the car you drive, the restaurant you can or cannot afford. When your identity is fused with your financial appearance, every fluctuation becomes personal. A bad month isn't just inconvenient, it feels like a verdict on who you are. I used to feel that. Deeply. A slow quarter in my income and I wasn't just stressed, I felt like a failure. And when that's your experience of money, no amount of savings can actually calm you down, because the threat isn't really about the money. It's about what the money means about you. The separation of self from financial circumstance. That's the quiet work that almost no one talks about. It's not about being indifferent to your finances. It's about being bigger than them. Knowing that a rough financial season doesn't define you, just like a good one doesn't either. That kind of internal stability is what makes someone look unbothered. Not a trust fund. Not a secret income stream. A self that isn't threatened by the fluctuation. And here's the thing about building that. It takes time, it takes intention, and it takes consistently choosing frameworks over feelings when you make financial decisions. That's the work. And it's the kind of work that compounds quietly, below the surface, until one day you realize you're the calm person in someone else's life. The one they look at and wonder about. That's where I'm headed. And if you want to think through money this way, with depth, with psychology, with the kind of frameworks that actually hold up under pressure, then this channel is built for you. Subscribe to Henry Wealth Blueprint. Every video on here is designed to do one thing: help you think about money in a way that actually changes how you live. Goodbye.